Okay, today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about the stages of cellular respiration. Our objective out of this lesson today is to be able to tell me 3 stages of cellular respiration is our first objective. Our second objective is to be able to tell me where these stages occur, where these stages of cellular respiration occur. And finally, we're going to have a diagram that we're going to put in our interactive notebooks, and you are going to be able to draw and color and label the diagram and be able to do that for our test, to label the diagram of cellular respiration. Okay? So those are our 3 objectives for this lesson. So let's go ahead and start. The stages of cellular respiration. I just told you that cellular respiration has a sequence of 3 steps, 3 different stages. The very first stage is glycolysis. The very first stage is glycolysis. The second stage is what we call the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle. And you're going to hear a little bit later that it's also known as the Krebs cycle. So you might want to write that in there too. The citric acid cycle is also known as the Krebs cycle. Capital K-R-E-B-S. Krebs. The third stage, oh, there we go. I didn't know I put this on the slide. Huh, sweet. All right, the Krebs cycle. The third stage is oxidative phosphorylation. Boy, those are some big words there. Not the oxidative, that whole phosphorylation part. And we're going to break that part down into something that we call chemiosmosis and the electron transport chain. Chemiosmosis, the electron transport chain. So, now that we've listed the 3 stages of cellular respiration, okay, let's talk a little bit about each one of these stages. The very first stage is glycolysis. Glycolysis. I told you you need to know where these happen at. Well, glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm. Now let's go back. Let's review. What is the cytoplasm? What is the cytoplasm? Now once again, folks, don't look at me with blank stares. Where should we be shuffling to? Where should we be shuffling to? Our cell, okay, our cell stuff. Find the cytoplasm. Shuffle back. If we don't remember, let's figure it out. Where is cytoplasm at? Let me shuffle back through my interactive notebook to see if I can find cytoplasm and how long it takes me. Got it! Mine's on page 45. Where's yours at? Should be page 45, right? Let's go back and review the cytoplasm. Who can tell me? Linda, what do you have written down there for the cytoplasm? Anything. Tell me something about the cytoplasm. It supports and protects the cell organelles, right? What else? Who can tell me something else about it? Jamie, nice and loud. What can you tell me about the cytoplasm? It's a jelly-like material found inside of the cell membrane. Now, let's look at our picture. Can we see the picture of the cytoplasm? Okay. See the picture of the cytoplasm? And we have a foldable, right? We lift that up, and it says cytoplasm supports and protects the cell's organelles. All right? So do we understand what the cytoplasm is? Do we remember it now? Okay? We have the cell membrane, right? We have the cell membrane. And just to give you a basic drawing, here's the cell membrane. Let's say that this is the nucleus of the cell. What is the cytoplasm? It's all that other area that is left over. That's a terrible arrow. It is all that area in here that is not the nucleus. All of the organelles are in that area of the cytoplasm, at least the organelles that are not in the nucleus. All right, so do we understand where glycolysis occurs at? All right. Glycolysis, the first stage, it begins the entire process of cellular respiration. It begins the process of cellular respiration. And oops, got a little skippy there. It breaks down glucose into 2 molecules of a 3-carbon compound called pyruvate. Okay? If you remember, so we've got glucose. And remember, what did we say the formula for glucose is? Who can tell me that? What's the formula for glucose? You should know this. You need to know this. Okay? You need to know this. Fletcher? C6H12O6. That is glucose. So, we can see that glucose has how many carbons? 6 carbons, right? So, in this process of glycolysis, the glucose is split into a 3-carbon. A 3-carbon compound that we call pyruvate. So, how many of those will we have? 2 of them. Okay? So, in glycolysis, what we are doing is we are taking the glucose and splitting it into 2 different 3-carbon molecules. So we're breaking it down, right? We're breaking glucose down. So when we talked about this, when we talked about metabolism, antibiotic, catabolic, what is this? What is breaking down? What is breaking down? Anabolic, right? Anabolic. You know how I remember these? Or excuse me, check. What'd you say? You didn't say anabolic, did you? You said catabolic, right? Catabolic. I was thinking process ahead. I was a step ahead. It is catabolic. It is breaking down. You know how I remember these? Okay? Baseball players that want to build muscle, we're taking what? Anabolic steroids. So what is anabolic? Building. Okay? We're getting bigger. We're taking smaller things, building it bigger. Anabolic. So catabolic must then be breaking down, splitting apart. So that's how I remember anabolic and catabolic. Okay? So, like Madison said, this is a catabolic process because we're breaking down the glucose into 2 pyruvate molecules. Now, I think it's probably pretty important to remember that. What is it breaking it down to? Glucose is being broken down to pyruvate. Okay? Not too tough to remember, but I think that is important for us. Stage number 2. Stage number 2 is the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle. The citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle. This takes place in the mitochondria. In the mitochondria. We talked yesterday about the mitochondria. We reviewed the mitochondria. Okay, you should remember that. So it takes place in the mitochondria. It oxidizes pyruvate to a 2-carbon compound. So it takes the pyruvate, which was the 3-carbon compound that we made during glycolysis, and it oxidizes that into a 2-carbon compound. As it does that, it supplies the 3rd stage with electrons. So in the citric acid cycle, we are changing the pyruvate into a 2-carbon compound, and it is giving us electrons for the 3rd stage of the process. Remember me telling you that 3rd stage, one of the things in it was the electron transport chain? Where do you think those electrons are coming from? Right here. Right here in the 2nd stage, in the citric acid cycle. The 3rd stage of cellular respiration is what we call oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. In this stage, we have the electrons that are carried by these 2 guys, NADH and FADH2. So those 2 substances there are what we call electron transporters. They are electron transporters. They bring the electrons from the citric acid cycle into this 3rd stage. The electron transporters, NADH, FADH2. The NADH and FADH2 shuttle the electrons to what we call the electron transport chain. This electron transport chain is embedded in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. The inner membrane of the mitochondria. And folks, at times, you might hear me talk about something called the ETC. What do you think that is? If I'm talking about, Brandon, if I'm talking about the ETC, what am I talking about? The electron transport chain. Absolutely. All right? The electron transport chain. This oxidative phosphorylation involves a process that we call chemiosmosis. Chemiosmosis. And this is where a good deal, this stage here, folks, is where a good deal of the ATP is generated. And we're going to talk about that later on, exactly how much. Okay, we're not going to do it today because we're just getting the stages down. We're going to talk about that later on, probably Monday. Okay, I'm not sure, but I think it's probably Monday. It might be Friday. Okay. And just like I said there, maybe got a teensy bit ahead of myself, is that the oxidative phosphorylation, this stage 3, generates ATP with associated with the electron transport, or excuse me, the chemiosmosis. Okay? So, it generates ATP through oxidative phosphorylation associated with chemiosmosis. Now, that whole process is a very detailed process, folks. It's a very detailed process. We're not going to get into the whole mechanics of chemiosmosis, oxidative phosphorylation. We're going to worry more about the amount of ATP that can be produced. Okay? We're going to worry more about the amount of ATP that can be produced. Now look at this guy right here. This is a diagram of the 3 different parts of cellular respiration. And if you look, this guy right here in the yellow, what is that guy right there? That is the mitochondria. Okay? The mitochondria. And didn't we say that stage number 2 and stage number 3 happen inside the mitochondria? Yes. So look, those 2 are inside the mitochondria. Where did glycolysis occur at? In the cytosol. Okay? In the cytosol. Now, if you look, folks, if you look during all 3 stages, we have the creation of what? What? ATP. Okay? ATP is created during all 3 stages. Now, what you're going to see later on is, do you think all 3 stages create the same amount? They're not. We're going to see that later on. We're going to see that later on. But what I want you to do is I want you to get this down, okay? And I want you to color this. I'm going to give it to you. You don't have to draw this or anything. But I'm going to leave this up here, this diagram, and I'm going to give you a blank diagram. I want you to fill the diagram out and color it. So we're going to cut, color, and paste this onto interactive notebook page number 72. Okay?